Well, I don't know how long I will have internet today, so we're going to try this. And if it blinks too much, then I will just go off and rant and upload. Okay, if you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Tidkmeyer. I used to write for Pathos, a column called No Longer Quivering that dealt with the things of Quiverful, the evangelical world, toxic religion, toxic Christianity. Not that all Christianity is toxic, not at all. But I dealt with the crazy side. Um, these are just my opinions. Please don't bully anybody that I talk about here, any way, shape, or form. We're not about that. We're about living a better life, not bullying the crap out of others to make yourself feel better. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit today about living your best life. I know one of the things that I had to put aside when I was first joining my Quiverful church. Good morning, Rev. Was yoga. I did yoga every day, twice a day, for a half hour to spell from probably the time I turned about 16 until 26 or so. So, like a stretch of like 10 years or more. And after that, I did it when I remembered to do it. Well, the deal with yoga was I had started doing yoga through PBS. They had this wonderful teacher named Lilia Spolis who did a twice a day yoga class. And I was involved in a very unhappy marriage at the time when I first started. Believe it or not, I got married at 16 the first time. That's a whole other story, but it helped me. That was my one little bright spot of the day. I could put the baby in the swing, wind it up, and do yoga. And I started doing it for weight loss and ended up doing it for the inner me. What happened was life got in the way. Once I started having kids and I was working full time and all of that, my yoga practice became less and less until I quit altogether, probably mid to late 30s. And then when we joined our church, they put a kibosh on yoga very, 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 very quickly. And what do I mean by that? I'm looking for this. I should have pulled it out in advance. Pull it out now. This was what we started looking at that stopped my yoga altogether. My church did Neil T. Anderson, The Bondage Breaker, which goes along with this little workbook. I've talked about this workbook before because it's got all kinds of ridiculous BS in it. And at the time, I thought, well, it was pretty BSy. Okay, like here's the part that undid my yoga, made that. Your mother had that. Yeah, it's one of those very popular ones that I could not believe. Non-Christian spiritual experience inventory. Okay. And this has such normal things as, let me see, what on here? There's some things that are kind of out there on this list. And there's some things that are not really very, not what I would call awful, like the Way International. Um, Materialization, you know what that is. So there's a lot of things on here, like reading your daily horoscope, that probably shouldn't even be on there. Having a fetish. Dungeons and Dragons. Theosophical Society. I'm not even sure what that one is. There's some things on here. I don't have any clue what they are. And some of them that shouldn't be on here, including some Catholic things from my old church. Hey, Rena. I'm explaining what's going on with me, sort of, kind of. One of the things right here, and I was kind of surprised because this is my husband's booklet. I don't know what happened to mine, but he's got yoga checked. I don't even know he did yoga. Must have been way before he met me, but yoga is one of the things on here. So you have to go through all of this crapola, this long list, some of it normal shit. And there was, I think that, yeah. So any kind of exercise that took a ritualistic form, like judo, karate, that sort of thing was on here too. Martial arts, any kind of martial arts. Oh, thank you, Rena. I have been missing so many people when I show up, they're not making it. So I don't know. So you have to tell them in detail down here what different things like have you ever been hypnotized? Do you ever have imaginary friend? Have you ever heard voices? What other spiritual experiences have you had? Have you ever made a vow, covenant, or pact with any individual or group? Have you ever been involved in satanic rituals, satanic? So anyway, at the end, it says, when you are confident your lift is complete, confess and renounce each involvement, whether active or passive, by praying aloud the following prayer. It's a simple one. It says, Lord, I confess I participate in insert your sin, and I renounce insert your sin. Thank you. In Christ, I am forgiven. Oh, so, and then the very next page is all the satanic crap. So, this has been this thing always gives me huge laughs. I get guffaws when I go through it. But when I was going through it the first time with my old church, I got to that page where you had to renounce your spiritual involvements and very timidly raised my hand and said, looking around, I dare ask, do I dare ask? I said, why is yoga on this list? And the elder running it went off the deep end and was, well, one of the elders wasn't running it, went off the deep end. I was like, because yoga, you're chanting the demons, you're chanting demon names, you're chanting to demons, and you're doing all these unnatural poses, and yoga pants are a sin because everybody can see your stuff. So I'm sitting there being told off and thinking, yeah, that's a pile of BS. Now, why did I think that was a pile of BS? Because, like I said, I did yoga all those years. I followed Lilias Folas on PBS, and I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I started doing it for exercise and quickly learned that it was more in here than it was external. Even though it did help with the external, it helped me maintain my equilibrium in a very bad, toxic, dysfunctional, abusive relationship until finally I got out, a baby one under one arm and a suitcase on the other. I got out, but that took some doing. So I knew what they were saying was BS. So years later, what am I saying? Years later, that same day, I went home and I pulled my Lilias Yoga and You book off the shelf and started flipping through it, looking at the poses, looking at all kinds of stuff. And one of the points, she started talking about her Lord Jesus Christ. And I was like, there you go. So she has more of a view that all spirituality is a good thing that works together. And I've kind of come to that conclusion too, in a lot of ways. And poor Lilias got blamed by these idiots. So for when I did practice yoga, I did feel guilty and would only do a few poses. And I remember stuff like when I had my hysterectomy, trying to get my digestive tract to wake up. And I had the hip bone to hip bone cut. I said, take everything. They took a ton of intrametrial tissue. They took my appendix, a number of things. And I woke up the next, and it was like I could not get my digestive tract started again. So I started remembering a yoga pose that is good for digestion. And I started doing the stupid thing in my hospital bed, and it helped. As I explained on the stream we did, I believe that all religions have a piece of truth and no single or just all. Rev, I agree with you on that. I've learned that through the years. So I never really went back to full yoga practice again until very recently. I found Lilias on YouTube. I found all of her videos. I found she even had an updated set for senior citizens. So I started doing yoga a full hour every day, and it has been the best thing. It has been the best thing ever. In just a very short period of time, I'm starting to feel better in so many ways. I started doing it again for balance because after my thalamic stroke, balance has been a continuing issue. I've gotten way better at it, way, way better, but still I'm pushing because I want to be able to throw the cane down. And I don't know if that will ever happen, but I am working on it and doing a pretty good job. I don't use the cane around the house at all. Sometimes go out and forget it, but it would be nice to not need it ever. And I'm not there yet. Yeah, Rev, I hear you because I'm being drugged back to that and I'm fine with it now, but I wasn't when I first started doing YouTube and going, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, I don't be drugged back in this. I wrote about it for 10 years. I need a break. Well, now I'm rested. I've had my break. I don't mind talking about this stuff. So I've been able to reclaim that part of myself that used to do yoga all the time. And it's been the best thing ever for me. It's been helpful. I can feel the results already. Even if it makes me grunt and sweat and do all that horrible stuff, and I'm moaning during it because I'm looking at Lily, I was going, smile, it will make you feel better. And I'm like wanting to fly the double birds because I'm too cynical to listen to that kind of happy crap anymore and take it in and think it means anything because it does not. That positive stuff. So I just want to encourage you, whatever it is that religion has stolen from you that should not have been stolen, take it, reclaim it back. Most of the stuff that they're claiming as a sin in this book is just ridiculous. It's not a sin. Yoga is not a sin. Even when you are doing Om, and I don't see how that would be a sin. Or this, it's not a sin. Oh yeah, I know. I know I'll get past the grunting, the groaning, the sweating, and I know that then I'll move to more difficult yoga. But for now, I'm in the senior moments yoga, where part of it's done sitting in the chair, and that works for me at this time because of the balance. And I'm working on the balance. I think this is going to be instrumental. It's just been for me. This has been quite the quite the path forward. I left my old church in 2006. I was still going there, and then I had started to let go of a lot of the beliefs, but not all of them. I am just now starting to completely strip away everything. And it's kind of funny because now when I see something like Rev can tell you, we were looking at Vadi Bakam Sakam robots, as I call him, a lot lately, and biblical gender roles. Larry Solomon popped up the other day too on my timeline, and I was like, nope. All of these guys, what they're teaching is a toxic version of Christ. It has no those two, yeah, it has nothing to do with Jesus at all. I'm just still astounded that both of them have any influence at all. And I think Larry just has his online influence because I know who Larry is in real life and I've seen his pictures. I know where he lives. It ain't fun. It ain't good. He doesn't have anything good going on in real life. So he hides behind a pseudonym and a website that is all about forcing your wife to have sex. And if she refuses, you take it anyway and you don't look at her crying, weeping face while you're doing it, or that's a sin. Everything's a sin for women, especially in Larry's world. And that's just not how it is. That's not how Jesus operated. That's not how the Bible means at all about any of this crap. He does have several, and they're all horrible. You're absolutely right. The sex one is the worst. And the sex one is just columns taken from the regular one, moved over to the sex one. So these are things he said in the past. When I used to write for NLQ, if I got stuck looking for toxic things to discuss, I knew I could go to Larry Solomon's biblical gender roles, and there would be something would pop up that would be squishy, gooey, gross, awful. Larry, oh Larry. Yeah, Rena Larry. Larry! It's, Joe used to say on the Impractical Jokers. And I would shout that every time I have to go through Larry's stuff. I was shouting Larry because Larry was giving me the creeps, giving me the creeps all the time. And I think the worst thing Larry did that I saw was he talked about controlling his wife's pain medication. She had a bad accident and is disabled as a result. And he was talking about using her pain medication to control her behavior, her attitudes, and all that. And I just found that to be so horrific. That's actually a crime. It's against the law. So many of the things that Larry advocates are against the law. The funny thing about Larry, the story I love, is that Larry dubbed me that crazy feminist writer. I embrace that. I embrace that. You know, was it Game of Thrones, Tyrion Lannister that said, never forget what others call you? Embrace it. Embrace it because everybody else will throw it at you. And if you've embraced it, it doesn't have the power to ever hurt you again. Well, that's where I am with the crap that Larry flung. Discipline, according to him. It's all horrible beyond belief. I wouldn't even know where to start with that. Yeah. He has some of the most bizarre criminal ideas. He's hardly the only one. There's another guy that I routinely used to see. First name was Kenneth. I can't remember what his last name is or what the name of his blog was, but he was always ranting about that word that starts with a W that means ladies of the night. He called all the women in his town that. He called his ex-wife that. He called his old church that. It was just crazy. It was like a free-form rant. And he is hardly the only one. One thing about non-denominational evangelical Christianity is it brings out the awful, the goopy, the weird. Christian patriarchal movement is quite dark and evil. Anything I find that's related to it just sickens me. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it needs to be rejected because it's not even slightly what the Bible meant. Who was the guy who asked Jim to take control of you? It wasn't Larry. I forget who it was. That was Lori Alexander's husband, Ken Alexander. Wrote my husband this long screed telling him on Facebook Messenger to control and discipline me. And I looked at that and laughed. His timing was the worst. He sent that when my husband had the stomach flu and was throwing up. I gotta go to see. Okay, see you later. And Ken sent him this thing, and my husband comes to me and says, "Look, I don't know who this ASS hole is, but I want you to deal with him. I don't know having part of that crap." And so I did. I just messaged him back and said, "This is Suzanne. Please restrain yourself," basically, and sent it on, and then copied and pasted it into NLQ to show everybody the kind of nonsense that I was dealing with in NLQ on a regular basis, because I would deal with these guys. And I would move them all to Jerks for Jesus on a regular basis because it just got overwhelming. And I found out that once I started Jerks for Jesus and I started making fun of the a-holery parts of this stuff and showing just how stupid these people were with their use of filthy language and demeaning language all the time, it was kind of funny and I kind of looked forward to it, but it cut down tremendously on that. Before, it was like, I remember one time Vicki Garrison got an email where it was a women's Bible study telling Vicki and I that they were praying for both of us to get uterine cancer and die because of our rejection of our quivers. Well, Vicki was all freaking out over it. I was kind of like, whatever. So I emailed them back and said, well, first, you're going to have to pray for one of God's creative miracles because we both have had total, complete hysterectomies. So for us to die of uterine cancer, you're going to have to pray that we get implanted with new uteruses. Anything's possible. But I laughed so hard over that one. So they tried to play a curse. So yeah, that's directly against about. Yeah, they tried to curse on us over a body part neither one of us even had anymore. That's what was so funny about it. And both of us had lost our quivers anyway to our attempts to be quiverful. Vicky had a pile of kids. I only had the three because that was all I could have. I had a pile of miscarriages. I had all kinds of problems because I had severe endometriosis and needed to have that hysterectomy years before I finally did. And when I had my hysterectomy at the old church, they gave me so much grief about that. So many people were of the Bethel opinion, which is you should pray for God to heal that part of your body. And I said, look, I've been praying for years for that, and nothing has happened. The only thing that's happening is every month when I'm getting my monthly, my red blood cell count is tanking because it's going on way too frequently and way too long, and I'm having to run and get a DNC on a regular basis. When you start getting a DNC every month to straighten your ass out, it's time to do something more. And so when my doctor made the suggestion, it's like, sure, yeah, let's do this thing. And I can't even begin to tell you the pushback I got because my church was following Bethel, number one, Bethel Reading, and their belief that anything in this world can be healed by enough prayer. And they were following a number of other theologies that said that you don't ever get rid of that part of your body. Yeah, ever. That you let God keep. And the thing is, let's see, how old was I? I was like 44 maybe when I had the surgery. And my last pregnancy had been 42. So from 42 to 44, I had nothing but problems from that moment on. It was that bad. So it was gone. I flipped the bird. That was one of the reasons that I finally ended up leaving was because of how I was treated during that time. I talk about before it being a giant canvas, like not a canvas so much as a piece of tapestry. And you pull the first thread out and you look at the design and you don't see that anything has really happened much. But then the second thread gets pulled and the third, and these various threads get pulled until it starts looking like a hot mess and you have to do something else. That's what happened. So, yoga, them telling me that yoga was evil and I knew it was not evil. The whole thing about me not having a hysterectomy, so many things, so many little things. My husband and his depression that ended up being a tumor. That was another thread coming out. That was a big, 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 big piece of thread. That deliverance ministry they sent us away from that I've talked about before that took place in where was that? I got to think about that one for a minute. I don't know why I'm blanking on the town. The town is in South Carolina. Is it South or North? Cape Fear. I guess it's South Carolina. It was near Cape Fear. It was not Foley Beach. Like I think there was a Surfside Beach and places like that there. Yeah, that deliverance ministry was more than out of their gourds. It was, and the thing is, they keep doing that, and they keep having to change the name of the ministry and the church because they keep being sued. They told my husband and I that both of us had been cheating on each other, and I just knew right away that was not so. I would not have married my husband if I ever dreamed he might cheat on me because that was part of the issue with my first husband. And that was one of my non-negotiables. I told him going into marriage, I said, if you cheat on me, it's over. I will pull the trigger and end the marriage. It does not matter what the circumstances are. You cheat, I'm gone. And he knew that was my bona fide. That was my line in the sand. I was willing to draw. And they told him the same thing, and he said, "No, my wife would not cheat on me," because he knew how I feel about that. That I think that people cheat. They're not very honest people. If you decide your marriage is over and you want to have sex with everybody else, fine, get a divorce, separate. Don't run around cheating. And as I told Reverend Ruin, when I was at my old church, I figured out recently that I knew 15% of the people who had cheated and had justified it with the Bible or whatever. And those were just the ones I knew of. So I think the real figure is probably at least double, maybe triple. And I couldn't get over that, how anyone would justify. So this crazy ministry was saying all this stuff. They told my husband that he loves Star Wars and fishing. Now, let me tell you something. This is a man that won't even watch Star Trek with me. And right now I'm going through Star Trek, the original one, then I'm going to move on through each series in order. I do that every day when he's looking at Fox News because I don't like Fox News and I can't listen to those guys. And he didn't like any of that. Not Star Wars, not Star Trek, none of it. He thinks he's just not a science fiction kind of guy. Reverend, that's what I've said. I've told him before. It's like, I can't believe you won't watch Star Trek. And I told him, I still can't get over the spells of sharing that used to go on back then. Rena, it's pretty crazy. I remember one guy at our old church that had married his wife right out of prison. That's never a good idea, by the way. Don't believe me? Go look at Love After Lockup. That shows you how destined for failure those relationships are. Well, this guy did that. He married this girl at church right after he got out of jail for selling drugs. And she was, I don't know how to put this kindly, because I was a friend for a little while. But then I just had to take a huge step back. She was childlike. She was like she was stuck at 12 years old. It's very sweet, but I mean, you couldn't hold any kind of intellectual conversation with her. You couldn't even talk about Star Trek. She wouldn't have been able to understand the themes. So he started cheating on her, and I found out later it was a yearly thing for many years. He would find a girlfriend and be running around, and his family would be supporting the wife and all the kids, and then he would come back all repentant. He did that, and he used me as an excuse at one point. He told his wife he was with me for a weekend at I think it was the Vermeer exhibit at the Smithsonian's. And I was not there. I had already been to the Vermeer exhibit. He was there with his girlfriend. His girlfriend told her husband the same thing. I went to church with all these people. So when the wife came up to me and said, "Oh, that's wonderful that you gave so and so tickets, Tommy tickets to the Vermeer exhibit, and you went with him." It's like, huh? Same thing that the husband said, and I had to disabuse both of them of that notion. And that was how they found out their significant others were cheating. And I confronted him and said, "Look, don't use my name when you're cheating. Don't use me as an excuse." I said, "I told your spouses that you were not with me." And the girl said, "It's not cheating. We're not cheating. It's just a friendship." You spent all weekend together in a hotel in the same room, and you're going to tell me it's a mere friendship? Is this one of those friends with benefits arrangements? The man said, "That's right. I'm in love with her. I'm going to marry her. She awakens the artist portion of me, blah, 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 blah." Well, what happened with that situation just about took our church down because it involved 4 different couples that my husband and I were friends with, by the way. And it got very ugly very quickly. Mental health advocates got involved. The pastor got involved. It just got very, very nasty. And I could not be friends with any of those people afterwards. I was kind of like, no. And some of them took it very personally and said, "Why won't you be friends with us anymore?" Says, "Because you used me as an excuse for your infidelity." So that was one of my lines in the sand back then. And it's kind of a shame because up until that point, We were decent friends with the husband and the wife and would hang out with them. And that ended that. That totally ended that. And he could not understand why we'd hold that against him. Now, he later ended up going and getting deliverance ministry too, but not to the place that we went to in Wilmington, North Carolina. Was it South Carolina? Wilmington. We went to Wilmington in one of the Carolinas, and the church at the time was a vineyard church. They're no longer a vineyard church. And it's a shame because I absolutely loved their pastor. He had like a PhD in some kind of nuclear science, and he had worked as a nuclear engineer and had been involved with Westinghouse and all these different things until he threw all that aside to be a pastor of this crazy town stuff. This church, their big thing, their big shtick, and it's still their big shtick, is their deliverance ministry where they bring you in for a full weekend of this crap. They kept my husband 9 hours. They kept me around somewhere between 2 and 3 because they saw they weren't getting through to me, and I was very close to the idea. And they told me some ridiculous stuff. They told me at one point, besides the cheating, they said that I had a VCR in my mind that recorded things and played them back, and that I obsessed over those things over and over again. I was like, you're saying that like that's a problem instead of a superpower. I am definitely guilty of overthinking. I still have that tendency to overthink. It's my superpower, like I said. And sometimes it's been beneficial. I've thought about things and thought about things until I was able to see my way out of the yoga. I can't tell you how many hours I thought about that after experiencing that at our old church. So that's what I mean when I say you got to pull this crap back and just keep moving forward. And sometimes that really looks, I mean, incredibly bizarre. This couple that, oh my cat has a snake. Okay, I'm distracted. I'm sorry. I have a picture window in front of me, and my cat likes to play in the yard in the mornings, and he does crazy shit. So I have to overthink these things sometimes in order to be able to deal with them. And the husband of this couple I'm talking about, I hope he's not bringing me a present. That's why I stopped and looked. He brought me a bat one day, a live bat. Opened his mouth and out it flew. And I'm not afraid of bats. Bats are adorable, but not a bat in your house. I had trouble getting rid of the bat. Um, so he has a tendency to bring me these things that I don't particularly like that, but he likes to. So the husband, example, the kind of crazy crap they used to pull after we quit being friends with them. My husband had kidney cancer. I think that was 2003. He had kidney cancer and it was pretty severe. They found it because he got a kidney stone. They found he had the cancer. So they took his right kidney, they took the cancer that was right next to it, and they left the left kidney. So he has one kidney. During that time frame, he was going back and forth and having various surgeries and treatments because they were getting rid of the kidney stone. And at one point, we'd known about the cancer. We knew it was serious. We knew that the odds were not in our favor at all, unfortunately. And I was kind of freaking out because he'd had the stone removed and had more tests run. And I'd left my 13-year-old son alone at the house. My daughter was away at camp, so I didn't have to worry about her. My oldest was long since married and gone. This guy and his wife came and picked up our son and left a note saying, "Hey, we're picking up your son. We're going to have him spend the night with our sons." And that was fine because the sons were still friends, and I wasn't about to get in the middle of that friendship. Well, I got my husband home, okay, and the wife showed up with all the sons and my son to pick up some stuff from him. And that was only a problem because he was about like a toddler. So while she's trying to talk to me and ask me about my husband's cancer, the toddler is running upstairs and going through my storage unit, trashing my German Christmas ornaments. And I'm yelling at him. I'm yelling at the boys that are running around like banshees. And I was actually really upset because we had been told we left the hospital that afternoon not to allow my husband around anybody but immediate family for a week or so because he had this open wound where they'd had to do the thing. So he, oh yeah, it's definitely a snake. And the cat is definitely fighting with it. It's going to bite him. Oh well. Um, so I kept trying to say, you've got to leave. You've got to leave. And she would not listen to me. So I was rather upset by that. And I ranted after she left to my husband, who was stoned out of his gourd. The next morning, I had to go pick up my son early because we had stuff we had to go do. And then I had to pick up his sister from camp. I picked her up. I went to go get him at their home. I went to go get them. And the day before, when the wife was there and the kid was trashing the place, the husband had called and told my husband not to trust the surgeon because the surgeon had done his vasectomy and had apparently made his junk hurt or something. I don't know the details. So my husband was freaking out about his surgeon, and we had to look him up and all of that to calm him down. So the next day, I picked up my son from the house, and he wasn't quite ready. He was pulling his crap together, and I turned to the husband and said, "Can you do me a favor? Can you not tell my husband that his surgeon is an idiot in the middle of him having procedures from this guy? Can you please just restrain from that? If you want to tell him about it later, great. But right now, we're in the middle of a medical emergency, and this is less than helpful." He started shouting at me. And one of the things that came out was he yelled at me, "No B word tells me what to do." Nice. Christian. Wonderful. So we ended up running from the house to my car. And he was chasing me with an upraised fist, trying to punch me. And I got in the car with the kids, terrified, and drove away from this nonsense, from this mess. At one point, he leaped in front of my car. And at the time, I was driving a brand new Ford Crown Victoria. So it would have I may not even felt it in the car if I'd run over him, but thankfully I did not, because that would have been a whole other mess of stupid if had I done it. But I got away from him. I got the kids home, and I had no sooner walked in the door than my very stoned husband is standing at the top of the staircase, screaming at me about attacking this guy, attacking Tommy. And I can assure you, whatever happened, I did not attack Tommy at all. I just asked him politely to stop telling my husband crap about his surgeon. He went berserk and attacked me. So there you go. And I had to talk my husband down off that cliff. And the kids were like, Dad, he was trying to hit mom. He was trying to hit mom. Before I was like, oh, okay. So this isn't quite what Tommy's saying at all. And when afterwards, he was like, Jesus Christ, this guy's nuts. I went to the pastor and said, if he is not stopped, I'm taking out a restraining order. So I was told, no, don't take out a restraining order. Let's see what we can do about reeling Tommy in. So they did. They spoke to Tommy and did all the crap with Tommy. And the last time I saw Tommy, he was struggling with himself pretty badly. He was struggling with the situation. It had come out that his wife had, I don't know if it was schizophrenia or bipolar. She had some type of rather serious mental illness on top of having a skeletal muscle disease that left her incapacitated. So he was having to do all the heavy lifting and everything. And I remember looking at him and thinking, oh boy, you really earned your karma, did you not? And I hate to see that. The cat's still fighting with that stupid snake. It's not a very big snake. You should be able to get away from him. It's just a very long one. And then he friended us on Facebook, and about a month later unfriended us, sent us all a message and said, hey, your extremely liberal views is making my blood pressure rise, so I cannot be your Facebook friend any longer. I was kind of like, whatever, dude, because he'd started trying to fight with me over my theology. My husband was like, oh, that's too bad. Well, that's it. So now you know way more about my stupid fundamentalist, semi-fundamentalist, semi-evangelical church world where all of the relationships were problematic. I have only kept one good friend through all of this, her and her husband. So I guess that's two friends, right? I'm closer to her. And I've had the opportunity to help her. She had a real bad car accident 3 months ago and just now came home. That's how bad it was. And she's trying to relearn how to walk. She had a brain bleed. So she, like me, has almost no feeling in her left side and cannot function. I've been telling her the same thing her physical therapist are telling her, which is it doesn't matter if you can feel your foot or not, put your foot down. Your brain and body will take over, but you have to step out to make that happen. It's just like recovering pieces of yourself. You have to step out to make that happen. Okay, so I'm done talking about religion. I need to talk a little bit about the internet and the internets that do this stuff. You know, I said some time ago I wasn't talking about Michelle Goes Live any longer, and I'm not really going to, except to say she's still having ongoing toe problems, and I'm looking at this, and I've got a medical opinions on it, but I don't have a medical degree, so I'm not going to speak on it except to say I believe she's probably going to lose that toe, and there are a lot of factors why. Well, the Tomageddon is still going on. I feel bad for her. I hope she gets the help she needs. But in the meantime, she's throwing shade at another creator about that creator's looks. So that creator's throwing shade at her. They're going back and forth. And the other creator is making multiple streams about her every single day. And it's like, girl, please, no. Tomageddon. Yeah, you should see she's got a black toe. It looks like it's going to fall off any minute now, Rev. And Michelle Goes Live, drinks on camera, and just all kinds of crazy stuff that somebody in their 50s should have long since been over. And it's kind of funny because she's from New Orleans and I'm from South Louisiana. I got relatives in New Orleans. I got relatives in Bayou Manchac, relatives in Ponchatoula. I've got relatives in Lafayette. Every little Cajun town you can think of, I got a relative there. So we're both been raised in similar ways. We even both went to Catholic schools in New Orleans. She and I are very different people. And I have to look at that. And I don't know for sure why that is, except to say I got all my yayas out early. And apparently she's still trying. There are a lot of my family, a lot of my Cajun family in Louisiana are like her. They drink excessively. They think there's nothing wrong with staying hammered 24/7. They do that and they all die early of I mean, just really tragic, preventable things. I was telling Reverend yesterday, I'm lucky. I outlived my father and his mother so far. I've made it a couple of years beyond where they've made it. And even after having two strokes, one of them minor, one of them not so minor. And I've learned a lot. One of the things that I've learned is that life is pretty short. It's too short to be calling each other ugly. It's too short to be worried about that. It's too short to be throwing rocks. It's too short to do like our least favorite YouTuber, our dear Catherine, is doing right now. She's obsessed with Vanderpump Rules and posting endlessly about either Vanderpump Rules or Sister Wives, and it's just gotten obsessive. You just can't do that. Go do a yoga for an hour. And I know I've picked as being part of the having all kinds of problems with chronic illness because of my mast cell, I've ranted and streaked a few times about the ones that'll say, use essential oils, do a yoga, do a kale suppository. I've always picked fun at that because so many people here are so into that and have told me, oh, you just need yoga for your asthma, for your mast cell. I don't think yoga is going to cure it. It might help some because the breathing exercises help. It's a joke, Reverend. The kale suppository thing is a joke that happened on one of the chronic ailment boards I was on. Somebody made up a list of the most unhelpful suggestions, and they kept getting more and more bizarre. And the kale suppository was one of them. And I like kale chips, but that's because they're covered with bad for you oily stuff. So some of the suggestions are funny. So that's what's so funny about going back to yoga now. I'm doing a yoga, folks. Those people that insist yoga is life, the ones that do yoga on the beach, prancing around their little outfits and do yoga on the beach. One time I saw a girl do a yoga headstand over a guy who was doing some weird yoga pose, and they were sharing a joint back and forth. That was like the craziest thing I saw on the beach here in Tamarindo, which is pretty crazy. So that's why I haven't been around. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm trying to have a real life that does not involve the stuff. Now, I miss you guys on here, but the thing is, I don't always have content to talk about. And I'm not going to do like certain people whose names I'm not going to say. Yeah, it probably did, but Rev, but at the time I was pretty anti-J when I saw this. I'm not now because I've done enough medical grade for my asthma prescribed by my doctors in Maryland to see it's such a helpful, beneficial thing for certain things. So I'm fully down with that now. And I never was before, even when my kids were doing it, but I wasn't losing my mind over it like my husband does. It was kind of funny when our son was about, I guess about 20. He used to smoke a lot of that stuff. And one time his little friend would come over, they would be smoking in his bedroom. You'd hear giggling and pizzas disappearing into there. And my husband, they're smoking in there, they're smoking in there, they're smoking in there. Go in there and say something to us. I'm not bothered by that. I want them in there smoking. I don't want them on the streets of this stupid little redneck town we live in doing that nonsense where they get picked up by the redneck police force we have here. I love edibles too. They're my favorite. They just do like that on my bronchial tubes. So I disappeared because of Sahara dust. Last 3 weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks, we've had an influx of Sahara dust, and it's taken a while to dissipate. Right up until it didn't dissipate until like 3 days ago completely when the rainy season came back 2 months early and just washed it all out. Now we've had the local volcano explode again. That is Rincon de la Vieja. Every time that happens, once the volcanic fumes hit the beach here, I am laying on the floor, gasping for breath. It affects me horribly. So that's really why I've been around. There's been a lot going on. I'm trying to do more stuff like yoga and art and things, and less internet. So I get to get off here and seal my window crevices in my bedroom. Fun. And in my sewing room. I'm giving up the living room and the kitchen as a lost cause to sealing off. He is still fighting that damn snake. I'm going to have to grab him by the scruff of the neck and pull him inside. Oh, no. He walked away. Okay. Stupid cat. He just wants to fight with everything. So I'll leave you with this. The craziest thing I've seen him do was one day I looked out the kitchen window because this house has huge picture windows in every room. It's nice. It's like living in a sunroom in some ways. Um, One day I looked out the kitchen windows and he was 20 feet up a tree. And I was like, what are you doing up there, Stinky? I looked up there and there he was. I ran outside to yell at him, of course, because he was pretty far up there. He came down very slowly and made a huge circle because there was a 5 foot long male iguana at the base of the tree, and the iguana was in show position. And he was showing off to Stinky. And Stinky had been messing with iguanas forever, showing up with weird bite marks from iguanas. And Stinky went right into submissive pose. And I laughed so hard. So that stupid cat will eventually realize that something is beyond him and submit to it. So I'm about to go out there and make him submit to me. And I think maybe I will try to relocate the snake so that it can climb off wherever else it needs to go. Love you guys. I'm going to go ahead and go. This has been way too long. I could have done a yoga.